Our next presenters are Pat Johnson and Mark Fenlon, and I've had the pleasure of seeing their presentation. They actually presented to our high school on this very topic on Wednesday, and so really all I have to say to you guys is enjoy. Pat and Mark, everybody.
Thanks. Hi, I'm Pat Johnson. I've been a teacher in the National School District for the past 11 years. Mark Fenlon has been teaching English in the school district for 14, 15 years. I teach civics and economics. And James is correct. Earlier this week we presented to the faculty, and a month ago we actually presented to the administration here at Nashville North. And that's sort of the goal of our project. We want to have sort of a team approach to tackling issues, not just teacher focused, but also in support of administration. So the essential question for our presentation today, can teachers and administrators collaborate successfully to retake the hallways, reduce tardies, and improve the school climate? So last year, if you remember, Mark and I presented on issues within the classroom. So today we're trying to take it outside of the classroom.
All right. So one of the problems that we've seen in the school is we've lost a little bit of control of the hallways in the last few years. We've had changes in behavior with kids. So we asked Diane McCann to help pull some data from X2. Getting data from X2 is really difficult. It's like passing a kidney stone. And eventually, I got a little flash drive that looked like it was smuggled out of Russia to me. And we just really got to examine the data real recently. But the stuff that popped out really most vividly was the fact that our seniors are the big problem. All right, and it's somewhat separate from what we're going to recommend, but essentially, we're going to have to punch the seniors in the mouth next year. Metaphorically, figuratively, actually, I'm not sure how that's going to work out. But as you can see, it starts out of this fairly small problem with freshmen, escalates sophomores and juniors in an almost reasonable way, and then you get to the seniors. They're the big issue. The privileged princes and princesses of the school need to realize they need to be leaders, not entitled brats. I digress. Enjoy. All right.
All right, so this data is from 2008 to the present. And we got this data on Wednesday, and we've been poring over it over the past couple days. And for today's presentation, we're looking, so we've narrowed it from 2014 to this school year. And the reason we went back to 2014 is 2014 was the last year before we implemented eBlock. eBlock is a advisory academic support in the middle of the school day between blocks 2 and 3. We run on a 4-block system. So in 2014, you see the total number of tardies sitting at 25,000, and then you see a spike in tardiness. And in this year, it's at 22,000 already. That once we include May and June, it'll be comparable to the 2016-2015 school year. So there's a bump in tardiness. So we're going to structure the presentation around this chart. Anytime you try to tackle an issue and then try to change, to create change, you need some items. You need vision, you need skills, you need incentives, resources, and an action plan. And this chart was pulled from someone in education trying to create positive change within their school district. If you don't have one of those elements, it leads to confusion, anxiety, resistance, frustration, or false starts. So throughout this presentation, we're going to structure it around sort of the top of the chart. And we'll take you through how we can bring about effective change within the hallways of Nashville North.
All right, first off, as Curly is illustrating, it's lack of resources. And Pat and I understood when we did our literature research, we're going to have to find solutions that essentially didn't cost anything. All right, but one of the problems has to be the hemorrhaging of resources over the last few years. All right, if you can see in 2004, 2008, we had many more adults capable of manning the hallways, being on the floor. 2 assistant principals, 4 headmasters, 3 SROs, 3 security officers, 2 SROs. We go down to the present day, we're down to 4 assistant principals, essentially 1 security officer. We still have 3, but we have a new camera system, and we have 1 person who obviously has to watch the door. And what good is a new camera system if nobody's looking at it? So 2 of those security officers are always in the room, and that leaves only 1 available to be on the floor. And during lunchtime, that becomes problematic too, because security officers have to eat as well. The APs are stretched incredibly thin. They look weary most of the time, and for good reason. They're maxed out. So when we were reduced to 1 SRO, so it's a net loss of 3 people and 3 adults. You may not think it's that much, but as we've had changes in behaviors to the student population, as we'll get to in a few minutes, we have fewer people to help out. In addition, a lot of the kids who would have the most significant behavioral and educational problems have been shunted back to the high schools, primarily because of the open-close nature of the alternative education programs, all due to budget reasons, either the Phoenix program or the Alt School. Whatever you want to call it, it's been closed, it's come back, it's gone. It seems to be gone for good. In addition, we're getting back to the most popular data. Everybody seems to love free and reduced lunch. Has there been a presentation that hasn't mentioned it yet? But the trend is what's most important. Getting the same data, thank God, we're both worried we're going to have different data. We got it from the same place, the New Hampshire Department of Education. The trend has been in Nashua North, it's leveled out at 42%. But the big takeaway from that is our kids are poor. And when you have poverty, or even just close to poverty, you have behavioral changes. We all know there's more drama in the halls, more problems with kids. You're giving kids more money, you're feeding them more in class, and that really does impact the behavior.
All right, so the basic summary of the challenges that the high school is facing. We have less staff members. There's changeover among the administration that we have. E-Block has created a tardy issue and sort of has changed the climate and culture of the building, at least among the students. Students are poor. Those alt programs, as Mark just talked about, opening and closing, and changes in student behavior. So we've identified the two blocks of the day that are the toughest for both security and the administration is E-Block and third block. And actually, James Graham gave a presentation on Wednesday focused on E-Block, so which ties in nicely with what we're presenting here today. So we're focused on third block because that's the lunch block, and it's the block right after E-Block. So some more data that we've culled from the flash drive that we received on Wednesday. This is third block tardies, if I can speak, by grade level. So in 9th grade, just over 1,200 tardies. And then you look at the seniors again, over 11,000 tardies. So the seniors, again, are the problem. Okay?
And must be dealt with.
Some of our sources for the lit review, this is Taming the Tardies, Every Minute Counts. And the big takeaway from this lit review is that there's a lack of supervision in the hallways. If students pick up on the fact that there are less administrators in the hallways, especially during third lunch, because 2 of the assistant principals are in the cafeteria at all times, kids are going to pick up on this. It creates sort of a culture. You have some kids skipping, they drag in other kids that are in the middle of the road start arriving classes late. And so there's this perception that they're not likely to get caught if there's no one in the hallway sort of looking out. So again, it's going to be a third block focus. The proposal that we're bringing forward is to, and when we met with security and the administration team, they told us that third block is where we should focus. And they've identified areas in the building that we should have more staff personnel to watch over. And that was the gym area, where many kids access the parking lot for the juniors and seniors, and also outside the media center, sort of diagonally across the hallway from where we are.
So once again, getting back to the chart, if you have the lack of resources and the lack of vision or a plan, it can lead to false starts of confusion. And we've been trying to make some changes here. And as Pat alluded to, this in conjunction with James Graham presented to the school, which was a potential restructuring of E-Block, would potentially free up maybe people to be able to help in the halls here. Our plan's focusing on third block, so it's sort of, they both work well together. So one of the sources that we had too was Taming the Tardies, and one of the things that they emphasized was the positive sweep, all right, to escort tardy kids to school. We tried that back in the Dave Ryan era, but it only lasted really for a few weeks. It was effective, but it didn't stick. We had a lot more initiatives going on back then. I've always believed that you do 1 or 2 things well as opposed to 5 or 6 things poorly. But this is something I think we can do. So it can improve the climate and reduce referrals, misbehavior, but also improve staff morale. And that was one of the issues we have. It's like, make us feel better about it, become part of the solution, not just complain about it. All right, so one of the sources that I looked at, and we both had similar sources, was, and this was a school where they were looking at a school outside of suburban Chicago, and it was similar to North, except for the fact that it was actually poor and slightly larger. So I actually thought that was a better model, something that actually had more challenges than we have. I believe they were about 82% free and reduced lunches. So my reasoning was, if it can work and help there, then it should be able to help a place like this. Because we don't have bad kids, we just don't have kids, the type of kids who go where they're supposed to go. If they see a loophole, they go right through it. So when they implemented the program, it's going to be similar to what we are going to suggest. So they had the active sweep. They assigned staff to supervise certain zones. And what they found was, it was a voluntary program, and it took them 2 or 3 years to get to this point, was they found out that on average, it was only taking away about 10 minutes from their plan period to be able to contribute to this plan. It wasn't taking up so much that they couldn't do their job. And if we get to the effectiveness here, if you look, it was pretty startling what they were able to do. So before they implemented this, they were having about 1,600 total targets and about 72 a day. That's a lot. All right, June 2008, the total had been reduced to 239 and 17 a day. So it really did seem to work. It did take about 2 years, but they had to actually keep track of the data. So what we're offering is a quid pro quo. Please notice the massage. You have to massage the problem, just like that. Sort of creepy and fascinating to look at, isn't it? So what we're suggesting is a voluntary pilot program. All right, incentives for staff members, incentive for kids, target E, block 3, as Pat mentioned. We think we'd need about 5 staff members to volunteer part of their block 3 prep. We won't know who those people are till the master schedule comes out. Right now, they're wrestling with the multi-headed hydra right now. So we probably need this number of teams. We need 2 at the gym, and pairs always work better. 1 to escort, 1 to stay. All right, 1 in the main hallway. Maybe we can get away with 1 person as the SRO for backup, and 2 outside the T-stop calf area. Because when they leak out, as Pat mentioned, there's always 2 APs in there, and they're usually also dealing with 1 or 2 crises at different parts of the building. So it's not like the other 2 are free. They're almost always busy doing something. All right.
And the key part of the proposal is that it is voluntary. So you have your plan block during block 3, you volunteer for this program. It's not mandatory.
Because one of the things we find, if people get anxiety if they don't have the skills. I don't want to confront kids who won't go to class. I don't want to make things worse. Well, the plan is fairly basic and simple. All right. The study that I mentioned too, I said another one that had 1,200 students, the 85%, 21% had some form of disability, 17% were ELL. This is the same school that had the positive results I was referring to. So it really is a pretty good model for something that would work, by the way, itself as well. So in order to do this, for the best practices we found, what we have to do is keep accurate tardy and attendance data. And that's on some of the staff. Some of us do a great job, some of us don't do. So when the admins get the cut lists, they're not always as accurate as they can be. So we can be better at that. All right? Staff involvement is really critical. Everybody be at the doors, be a little bit more encouraging. We mostly do that.
So the role of the staff member. For those that volunteer, if they need professional development training in de-escalation techniques, when we met with the administration team last month, they said that they would be willing to offer that professional development to those staff members. And the goal here is to have a positive interaction with the kid. Try to de-escalate the situation, or at least don't escalate the situation. If you go over to a kid who's tardy and you try to send them on their way, if they swear at you, if they walk away from you, you don't have to chase them down. You can rely on the camera system that we have and rely on the security person that we have back in the security office. So as an example of this, anecdotally, while we were putting this presentation together, I was teaching my class during 3rd block. There was a commotion in the hallway. I went over to the door, and there were 3 kids playing music from their phone, and they were swearing, saying F off, right? So rather than confront them and leave my class, I didn't know who they were. I just simply noted the time, noted the location of where they were in the school, sent an email to security and to the assistant principal. They reviewed the tape. Antoine, the security officer at North, pretty much knows every kid in the building. So they were able to nab the 3 kids and issue consequences immediately.
So as a handy dandy flow chart to what we're proposing, it would be very similar to what Pat just described, only it would be formalized with volunteers. Teachers at checkpoint, walk kids to class, pleasant conversation, make sure you're not tardy next time, Jimmy, come back. All right, teacher, if you do get non-compliance, teacher just logs the time and date, email security. We're hoping perhaps that we can do a GoFundMe or something, maybe get some iPads, so you do it right then. You know where you are in the building, you know what time it is, they look at the cameras, security identifies, emails the appropriate AP, the AP delivers the consequence to the student, much quicker, much easier, no need to escalate it. However, how do you get staff to participate? We know we're not going to get more money. All right, central office. No unicorn. The superintendent's not here. I thought maybe he might ride in on one. And we know there's no magic coming from central office. It's practically a ghost ship. It's been eviscerated like a lot of the other staff too. So how do we get staff to cooperate too? There might be some resistance. There has to be some sort of quid pro quo system. We have to, what are they going to get back in return?
So for staff members, we know that James Graham at least really loves meetings, but one of the incentives for staff members is maybe not to require them to attend every single staff meeting throughout the year. After school, we have ACE detention duties. Those staff members that voluntarily give up some of their plan time, they don't have to do the after-school detention duty. Sort of, become part of the solution here. Having commendations, like simply the principal writing a commendation, inserting it into your file. How often does that actually happen? And then for students, we've gone back and forth, and this is an ongoing discussion with the administration. We have school spirit weeks in which we reward kids for having school spirit, but how often do we reward kids for, being good kids? So when you combine the vision, the skills, the incentives, the resources, and the action plan that we're proposing here, hopefully we can bring about change in the hallways of Nashua High School North. Any questions? Yes.
Sure.
Very good presentation, thank you. I would like to know what the consequences are that you mentioned to the student who doesn't do what you ask them.
I imagine it would be something like an ACE detention, a thing of people patrolling the halls. An ACE detention is basically about an hour after school in the room very close to here. So that's like sort of the first level of consequence. And I imagine if they're a frequent flyer, you might have to start suspending them. All right, and actually, and I think with seniors, since they're the problem, and that this isn't my decision to make, I think you can take away some of the privileges because it's not a right, it's something you have to earn. That would be my guess at this point. And we have two assistant principals who have been very supportive right behind you. So they might be able to speak more about that or what type of thing. But that would sort of be along the lines, wouldn't it?
I would think if they weren't compliant with you in the hall.
Oh yeah, I'm talking about non-compliance.
Yeah, non-compliance would be more than a detention and like, that would be insubordination.
Yeah, if you just bring them there.
Right, so we would definitely want to keep a stronger consequence on that because it all begins and ends with respect. If we don't have respect in this building or any school building, we're not going to learn.
Right.
And there is progressive discipline
Right.
that, and we all get together as a team and decide on that. For our seniors, I know, I can speak for myself and Sharon, that we have revoked their parking privileges if tardiness becomes an issue. So that is a place to definitely hit them when tardiness becomes, they start to lose some of the privileges they have.
And I do think that part of the increasing tardiness is probably does correlate with as they become drivers, or their friends become drivers, because I think the number one thing that we fight on getting kids into school here on time oftentimes is Dunkin' Donuts, and that's something that we visually see.
Could I have a question? The statistics were just for North?
Yes.
Yes.
And, I forgot what the second question was. It'll come to me.
Angela? Oh, sorry.
Have you thought of having teachers get more involved with like a school-wide policy? For my classroom, if you're tardy 3 times, you automatically get an hour detention. And that really limits the tardies in my room. Having teachers step up and start giving more consequences because they're tardy for their class.
Yeah, I think there's a feeling among some staff members where they're reluctant to issue the consequence because at least the kid came, you know? So, and that's a teacher by teacher issue, so.
Yeah, and it depends on the level of your kid, yeah, too. I mean, to me, for sometimes, it's, if a kid like does show up and they start trying, I don't always want to.
Well, I have non-level in my classes, but it's a business class, and you're gonna go into the real world, you're expected to show up to your job on time. This is your job.
And hand in the papers on time, but that seems to have gone the way of the windmill with competencies to a degree. Well, I digress, as I often do. Did you have a question over here? I'm sorry.
I was just curious, I didn't realize as a middle school teacher that this was an issue in the high school, and as a middle school, we can take attendance every single class. Does the middle school need to be aware of this and help, not program our children, but help our children recognize their responsibilities moving into the high school? I mean, have you thought about the middle school, because we're prepping them for you all?
Well, it seems like the freshmen don't have as big a problem, so I'll give you some kudos here. It seems to be as they get older, they get more entitled, push back a little bit more. I'm not sure exactly, but I think they're coming in with more respect and they're sort of losing it as they get older. That would be my guess.
Well, I think our upperclassmen travel a little more throughout the building, where our freshmen seem to
More
stay more centrally located with their core courses. Once they get out into the electives, you can be traveling from B3 to D3, auto to B3. Not that that's an excuse, I made it in 5 minutes. But
And I don't think teachers are getting kids always for being like a minute late or something like that. I'm not that type of person. Maybe there are, but I don't think the numbers show that it's bigger than just that. You know what I mean? If a kid's coming from D-wing and they say I'm a minute late or something like that, I let that slide.
There's also that unofficial theory that the seniors are still struggling a little bit because they used to have the 8-minute passing time when we switched to the 5. And so there is that still theory, spoken throughout the building, that we're going to see this evolve with our next year seniors. And I call it an unofficial theory because I'm really not convinced that I buy it.
Well, we saw a jump, if you saw the data, the chart that Pat talked about, it wasn't quite a 20%, it was about 17 or 18%, and they coincided together, so there was an increase.
Yeah.
But if it's overwhelming seniors, it's them not caring,
Right.
to me.
I had a question
Oh, sure.
and just kind of a comment. How many seniors are there? Because you were like,
It's the smallest class, it's probably around 400.
that's an amazing amount of tardies. I feel like it's like what I saw, I guess this is my comment part of it, it's like it creates a culture from freshmen to seniors.
Oh, right, they're not leading.
Like there's a culture of not having to, and I feel like that kind of coincides with the loss of resources, right? Because being a middle school teacher, what we have found with our student probation programs is we don't have any teeth at the district level to back up anything that we do. And as far as consequences, you can issue a detention or whatever, but if the kids don't come, then the further consequences we're all straight out, everybody's busy, there's not enough assistant principals to deal with it all, and so we're all like flat out and no teeth at the end of the road to create any fear in the students that any consequence that's actually going to matter to them. So it's for us in the middle school, it seems like it's kind of been created there, though it sounds like you might have some ideas for that currency that the kids will want, if they lose their parking pass.
Yeah, the parking thing seems powerful to me.
Is the currency, right?
Hitting them right in the mouth.
So I have hope for you that you have a currency, because we're lacking that currency in the middle school, and we lack the resources, and we lack the teeth.
One more question. I know that some of the more significant data came in quite recently, but I was wondering if you thought of sharing this with the senior class,
That's what I'm hoping Mary Ann Bastide will do. In fact, that was going to be my personal recommendation to her, because That's the surprising thing. If you asked me about this, I wouldn't have bet on anything on them being statistically that different. I just wouldn't. So we got it late because they were, the woman who could pull the information was very busy with the master schedule, because that takes up so much of the admin's time this time of year. That's all they're doing. They're like in a bunker planning World War II. So they don't have time. So when they finally got it to us, Pat and I were looking at it Friday afternoon. It was quite surprising that it.
Yesterday.
Yeah, yesterday.
One thing that, I've been lucky enough to be part of this program for 3 years, and I've noticed that this really isn't a 1-year program. It really takes you 2 years. The first year is when you're identifying it and you craft your solution, but then the next part is the implementation piece. So, when I go in July with Gary and James, I'm going to be sort of promoting that piece, that this really should be a 2-year program. But, yeah. Thanks, everybody.